Most people get their exterior color palette completely wrong. But you're not most people, because you're going to learn exactly how to pull together the most cohesive exterior paint color palette with this little crash course. Now, you might be asking yourself, why are exteriors so hard to get right? And that's because there is so much to consider. You need to consider your stone, your brickwork, your windows, if you have vinyl windows, your roof color. There is so much that goes into selecting a color palette for your exterior. If you stick around till the end of this video, you are going to be an absolute pro. We're going to talk about my favorite body colors, my favorite trim colors, my favorite colors for front doors. We're even going to talk about what not to do and what to do using real life examples from real estate photos that I just quickly pulled. And believe me, there are so many examples of what not to do. So you are going to have a little crash course in choosing exterior colors. Now, if you are planning a new build, you have a much easier task ahead of you than someone with an existing build. That's because you can correctly choose the right fixed elements, things like your roof and your stone or brickwork. However, if you're like most of my clients, you're really seriously trying to improve the look of an existing home. So you have to evaluate your roof, your stonework or bricks, your windows if you have vinyl windows and they're a color. You've got a lot to contend with. Ideally, the color that you choose for the body color, the trim color, and even the door color are all going to be harmonious with your fixed elements. If you've watched any of my other videos and you know I talk about choosing a neutral inside and why it's so hard to do that, because the neutrals that you choose must relate to your fixed elements and your furnishings in your room. It's the same way on your exterior. Beyond thinking about the fixed elements on your home and choosing colors that will relate best to those, there's a little bit more to it, but we're going to get into the colors because I know some of you are getting antsy, and I'll just kind of give you tips and tidbits along the way. First up, let's go over some white and cream paint colors. Now, in my opinion, white and cream colors on a house will always be timeless. I know it's been very trendy lately thanks to the farmhouse and the modern farmhouse just absolutely sweeping the nation. However, we're going to talk about more of the timeless white paint colors and how to work with those on your exterior, because they are still some of the most loved colors. Just like white kitchens, to me, white exteriors will never be out of style. Now, what you might be surprised about in this video is that most of the whites that I'm going to give you for the body color are not the same popular off-whites and whites that you hear about used over and over again on your interiors. And that's because white, well, really any paint color lightens up dramatically outside. My clients are always so surprised when I give them a darker color than they thought they wanted on their exterior, only to find out when they go test out that paint color on the outside, it's so much lighter and brighter and exactly what they wanted. So the first color recommendation I have for you is Benjamin Moore China White. This is a gorgeous color, and for those of you that are looking for that true white on your exterior, you're going to find it with China White. It's not going to be too blinding. It's got an LRV of 76, which compared to a lot of off-whites that tend to get a little bit too bright outdoors that have an LRV of 80 to 83, China White is a really nice bright white without being too blinding. Now, technically, this is a very, very, very pale greige color with a green undertone, so you need to keep that in mind when you're pairing this color with your home's fixed elements. Next up, we have Alabaster by Sherwin-Williams and Benjamin Moore White Dove. Now, these are both classic off-whites, and I know I said that you typically don't use these outside, but some people want that true white. This is about as bright as I would go outside. Alabaster has an LRV of 82, White Dove has an LRV of 83. When you start putting, like I showed in the earlier examples, something like pure white that has a much higher LRV, you're just gonna get that blinding look. If you want a true white, you need to check out China White, Alabaster, and White Dove. Now, my preference would be that you stick to China White as one of the, palest colors, palest whites that you're gonna put outside. However, it's fine if you wanna look at White Dove and Alabaster as well. Now, many of us are searching for that classic cream look on our exterior. That's really in right now. I think that there's a trendy way to do that, and I think that there's a classic way to do that. Sherwin-Williams Soji White has an LRV of 74, and it is a perfect color for your exterior if you're searching for a creamy white paint color. Now, technically, this color is a cream with a green beige undertone. So keep that in mind as you're pairing it with your home's fixed elements, because you want it to relate to your roof, your brick, and your windows. If you liked Soji White, but you wanted just a little bit more creaminess, you are going to love Benjamin Moore Ballet White. It has an LRV of 71, so it's got a little bit more depth to it. It's the same makeup in terms of that it's a cream with a green beige undertone, so you do have to keep that in mind. Now, most people get a little antsy when I mention beige paint colors, but beige is majorly coming back. I love it for exteriors. There's two that I'll recommend. I just want to say that today's beiges that I am recommending are nothing like the beiges that everyone hated in the 90s. They're not dark, they're not bleak, they're really warm, really pale, and they look stunning on exteriors. Sherwin-Williams Wool Skein is a beige paint color that I love to recommend for exteriors. It's got a green undertone, which is fairly easy to work with, but you do need to make sure that it works with your fixed elements. It has an LRV of 63, but it lightens up so much outside and looks like more of a darker cream on the exterior. Now, in this picture, Relaxed Khaki by Sherwin-Williams is the siding portion, and then Wool Skein is the brick portion. But all in all, that is a absolutely stunning combination. Benjamin Moore Manchester Tan is very similar to Wool Skein, but I also like to recommend it a lot for exteriors. It's got an LRV of 55, so again, it's got a little bit more depth, and it's got a green undertone. Okay, Greige paint colors are also pretty heavily requested nowadays, both for interiors and exteriors. I like Greige because it's just a really warm neutral ground in between the two cool grays, and it's not quite as warm as beige. If you want something in between, Greiges are perfect and they look great on your exteriors. Benjamin Moore Balboa Mist is one of my favorites for interiors. I've used it in my personal home. I absolutely love it. It also looks stunning on exteriors, as you can see. It's got an LRV of 65, and now it does have a purple undertone, which tends to make some people a little squeamish. They don't understand purple undertones. However, you will be shocked when you start sampling these colors with your stone or brickwork. There are so many purple undertones with elements used outside. This color absolutely corresponds with a lot of fixed elements on exteriors. Sherwin-Williams Oyster White is a pale greige with a green undertone and has an LRV of 72. It's going to lighten up so much outside. It's going to end up looking like a very soft, creamy beige, which is what so many people are searching for right now. White Duck by Sherwin-Williams doesn't get mentioned too often, but it should. It's a gorgeous paint color for interiors and exteriors. It has an LRV of 73 and it has a green undertone. So this greige, it almost looks like what you would think White Dove would look like outside. It's just creamy, it's very neutral, it works with a lot of palettes. It's a great color to sample. Now, a lot of people dismiss taupe paint colors, but you absolutely have to sample them because there is so much stonework that works perfectly with taupe paint colors. Think of taupes as that comfortable middle ground. It's that Goldilocks of a color. It's not too cool, it's not too warm. Just like Greige, it sits right in the middle of gray and beige. Pale Oak by Benjamin Moore is a super popular paint color indoors. It also looks gorgeous outside. It's got an LRV of 68. Now, taupe paint colors have either pink or purple or sometimes a combination of those undertones. Pale Oak tends to lean a little bit more pink, and that works with a ton of brickwork. Stone Hearth by Benjamin Moore is a darker taupe, which is really pretty on exteriors. It has an LRV of 48, and it's got that taupe undertone. Okay, let's move on to some non-neutral colors. We're going to talk about greens and blues, which are pretty popular for exteriors, but you know what? I'm not seeing too many people get bold with greens or blues. And I think that there's just a fear around it because it's a little bit less conservative than a lot of the neutral colors, but I would love to see some of you embrace greens and blues and some colorful exteriors. Hopefully today's video gives you the confidence to do that. Now, with colors that are not neutrals, you don't need to be super concerned about whether or not the colors relate to your stonework or your roof or things like that. What you need to concern yourself with is the color palette. And what I mean by that is just take a look at this brick house with these bright, clean blue shutters. Now, brick is like, when we talk about colors, we talk about dirty colors and clean colors. So dirty colors need other dirty colors to look good. Clean colors need other clean colors to look good. When you put a clean blue on a dirty red color palette, it looks awful. So that's what you have to pay attention to when you're picking non-neutral colors. Now, keep in mind, these colors that I'm going to list off here, you can use these for body colors, you can use these for accent colors, whether that's your shutter or your front door. They're fairly versatile. Let's move on to front door colors. Now this is where we can have some real fun. If you are just itching to throw some color on your house, get creative with your front door color. Of course, it's always best to repeat that color either on shutters. If you don't have shutters, you can kind of get creative by repeating that color with landscaping. I've seen that done really well. Or just colorful pots that you find that kind of repeat that pretty pop of color on your front door. So here are some of my favorite front door colors. Okay, trim colors. Now, you would think trim would be easy, but that's one of the most complicated things to get right on your exterior, besides making sure that your body color corresponds well with the fixed elements on your home. Now, the things I said earlier about some of the true whites and off-whites and how not to use those on your exterior because sometimes they can be a little bit too blinding, you don't need to worry about that for trim. When you are working with clean, bright colors like a bright blue, a bright green, absolutely you can use a true white or an off-white on your trim. That's perfectly acceptable. However, you will find that when you have homes that have that more earthy palette with their stone or their roof, you want to use colors that I mentioned earlier like soji white or oyster white because it's just a creamier look and it tends to look better. It also works with a lot of vinyl windows that are just, they're a little bit too creamy to pair with those true white or off-white trim colors on the exterior. So make sure you keep that in mind when you're testing out a trim color. But here are some of my favorite trim options. So now we're going to look at some real life examples. These are real estate listings in a random area. And guys, I did not have to spend a lot of time at all looking for what not to do. It was actually much harder to find examples where I could show you, okay, this was done correctly. So let's go over them. This is really where everything that I just taught you is hopefully will solidify for you. So in this first image, you know, a lot of people are rushing, like I said, to paint their exterior white and then they're accentuating it with black soffit and fascia, and this was not done correctly, and that's because look at the roof. Do you see how warm of a palette that is? Now, it could have worked. I do like the body color that it's not bright white. It's more, it actually does look like maybe a soji white. The only mistake they made here was using that black. It's just too stark. They honestly should have used either a darker green beige or something of that nature for the trim on the fascia and soffit and chimney, and that would have been so much more of a soft look. It would have been cohesive because that roof line is really takes up a lot of real estate on that house. So you have to consider it when you're choosing your trim or your body color. The next example is not super bad, other than, and this is something that I didn't warn you about when we were talking about the colors, but when you add that third body color, it just gets a little too much. Really, you need to just stick to 2 body colors. That red really doesn't relate to anything. It just looks like they thought, oh, well, we need a third color here, and they just stuck that red up there. So if you stick to 2 body colors, that's gonna be your best bet. And honestly, sometimes you just need 1 body color and an accent door color, and you're good to go. Okay, this home, I like what they did. I like that I see some color on the body color. I like the blue. I think the fact that they went several shades darker with the door is perfect. The only thing that I would mention here is when you have a house that is, you know, there's a huge garage in your front, and I wish that they would stop building houses like this. My house is like that too. I can't stand it. Sometimes you can really kind of camouflage that garage and almost make it go away if you don't paint it white and instead you paint it the same color as your body color. I think that would have looked so much better, but that's really the only critique I have for that house. All right, this next one is what to do. So this home was done, I don't know the exact paint colors obviously, but it looks like a really good match in terms of the brick is very warm, very creamy. They've paired that with a very warm, creamy body color. It looks perfect. It's not too stark. This is a perfect example of what to do. Here's another example of what to do. I do think this body color could have been a little bit closer of a match, but again, it's very close to that stone. They clearly evaluated that stonework before they picked a paint color. Look how much more harmonious that looks than something stark or something that just was in the wrong undertone palette. This is an example of what to do. Here's another example of what to do. They have gone with a gray. They have, it looks like either true white columns or off-white, you know, bright off-white columns, which is perfectly fine, especially for this house. The gray on the body really works well with the charcoaly gray roof. The red door looks perfect, especially because it's repeated in those bricks. I think this is a great example. We saw this example earlier. This is a classic case of clean versus dirty. You've got this dirty brick paired with a clean blue, doesn't work. Now, you absolutely could have done blue shutters, but they need to be a more muted blue. I think a blue shutter color like Hail Navy or Britannia Blue would have been absolutely stunning with this brick house, but this bright blue, this true blue that they paired it with, not good. Okay, when I first saw this photo, I was like, yay, color. But then I looked at the stonework and I thought, ugh, they completely disregarded that huge chimney and all the stone that they have under their house and just chose a very cold gray and paired it with a very warm, very orange-based stone. Doesn't look as good as it could have looked. I also think that the front door was a little bit too clean of a color to work well with the stonework. So again, I like the use of color, however, it's just the wrong color for this house. Okay, our last example, and this is a good one, so we'll end on a positive note. I love the use of color. I love the blue. I love that they did a lighter blue on the front door than the body color, and then I love that they just kind of threw in some really pretty orange rocking chairs. I just think that this is a fun, happy house. Now, if you're still watching, congratulations. I know this has been a lot. I'm just going to end with a few quick tips that I haven't mentioned when selecting your exteriors. The first thing you need to do is consider your location and your neighbors' houses. A lot of people are painting these stark white houses or houses that have colors that just don't really mesh with the neighborhood, and they end up sticking out like a sore thumb. So when you are choosing paint colors, make sure that you take into consideration what your neighbors' homes look like. And if you're in a neighborhood that's very dated, that does not mean you have to choose a dated color palette. It just means you need to take into consideration, will a stark white look good here? Or will a bright blue look good here? Or should I do a more muted white? Or should I do a more muted blue? That's what I mean when I say take into consideration what your neighbor's houses look like. Another very, very important thing, please don't look at paint samples inside that you're considering for outside. You must look at them outside. Most people will dismiss a lot of these colors because they'll be too dark, because they'll look at them inside or at the paint store. You must look at them outside. Another thing that you cannot do is paint a bazillion samples onto your siding right next to each other on your current siding or on your current brick. You need to isolate them behind a white sheet of paper, white poster board, so that you can truly see the color for what it is. Another tip, you should know this by now, but you cannot forget your home's fixed elements. So you must look at your roof, your stone, your brickwork, your vinyl windows. You have a driveway that's a particular color, a particular stone. You need to evaluate the things that you cannot change and to create a harmonious palette. Lastly, if you can, repeat that accent color. So if you want a pop of color on your front door, that's great. If you can repeat it with flowering pots or maybe a window basket or some landscaping or shutters, it really, really goes a long way towards a really pretty cohesive color palette. So that wraps up this video on exterior paint colors. If you really would love to paint your exterior white and felt like I didn't give you enough colors, I do have an exterior video on my favorite white paint colors that you can watch next.